Good morning. Today's Tuesday. It is the 10th of December and welcome to Summer's Way of Life. It's been a few days now since I've posted. So today I want to first of all share what I'm cooking in the kitchen. It's a really simple kind of curry and it's one that I always turn to when, number one, I feel like eating it. That's normally what incites us. When I say incites us, it encourages us to cook something. We feel like eating something. And secondly, it's really simple. So anyone can cook this. It's a great kind of Indo-Pakistani dish to start cooking from. It has meat in it. My body is craving meat, and I trust my craving because it's coming from the right source. And on that note, once I've showed you a little bit about how to cook this with the ingredients, I'm going to talk a little bit more about making choices from the right source and a little bit more about what actually happens in the brain. Let me come back to that in a minute, but it's very, very enlightening for those of you especially who operate from a logic and reasoned mind, which is your left brain. Most of us do. I would say I'm more right brain than left brain now and have been for some time. But there's no right or wrong here. Let me explain that later. So first of all, let me switch this around. Okay. So what I've got here is a pound of mutton mince. I had this in the freezer. I defrosted it last night. And so mutton is sheep. So this is sheep mince. Just to explain to you that in our family, we use a lot of mutton to cook. Back in India, Pakistan, mutton is known as, they use goat's meat to cook, which is also a very kind of healthy meat. Over here, you don't readily find goat's meat. Sheep meat, because of the nature of the UK and its land and pasture, is much more popular. And so mutton, we use mutton here, which is also sheep, is used for sheep meat. And it's not lamb. Distinguish that between lamb. Lamb is a young sheep. And from what I've read and also spoken to farmers, they have said that, there's another name they give it, but just for rule of thumb and easy to explain, that a lamb that's over 2 years old, the meat from that will be considered mutton. But then there's older mutton and younger mutton and so on. So one can distinguish that from the flavours of the meat, the feel and the texture. So this is mutton that I'm cooking with. I don't know the exact age. It's definitely not lamb. Probably a 3-4 year old sheep. So I've got a pound of that. Now, I've also got some dry spices. And in this one, I've got cumin here, dry cumin. You can see some black pepper, cloves, a cinnamon stick. I've got cardamom there. You can look over here. There's a green cardamom there. And I've also got some bullet chilies, maybe 3, which I have kind of torn with my hands and popped in here. Now, you don't have to use the chilies. These are very hot. You can just use one, but you'll soon get used to what your body wants, requires and likes and needs. Over here, I've got the dry ground spices. Now, in this particular keema, we call it keema, mutton mince. The key part of this mutton mince is the fact that it's not a wet curry. It's a dry kind of curry that is eaten with chapati. You don't generally eat this with rice because there's no gravy to it. When you've got gravy in a curry, there are other spices that are put in that give it that gravy bulk, like coriander, for example, or tomato puree, or a lot of onion, although there is quite a bit of onion in that, but it's how it's cooked that's the key. So dry spices. This is roasted ground cumin. So this is cumin here, which I've roasted on my hot plate, and then I grind it. I grind it in batches, and this is what it looks like, and it smells beautiful. I've got a little bit over here of Celtic sea salt, which were in crystals, and I've used a pestle and mortar to crush them. And over here I've got, I just want to show you this, cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is not what we ordinarily use in a curry, but the qualities of cayenne pepper are so magical, and I have explained it before. I explained the importance, the goodness that it does to the heart. It's a natural blood thinner and dilates the arteries. I mean, you know, there are naturopaths that recommend this instead of doctors, mainstream doctors that recommend blood thinners like warfarin, for example. You have to do your own research. So I know enough about cayenne, and I will use cayenne in this. So I've got like 1/4 teaspoon here. The other ingredients I've got here are an onion. I've got 1 onion that I've chopped up. I'm not going to use all of this garlic and ginger. I may not even use all the onions. I've just chopped them up, and I'll get a feel for what I need when I start cooking. That is the key ingredient with the shares here on my YouTube. It's not fixed. I'm showing you what's in there, and then you use your own inner instruction to work out your own validation that comes from within you. You may call it intuition, and it may well be, but actually there's something much more powerful than that, which I've discussed before and I've shared before, which is your own connection to nature's principles, the mind behind the universe, which is, you could call it God, as I've mentioned before, but it's something much more powerful than that. And it's very difficult for me to articulate. But inside, you'll know how much of what you need, and what you need and want now may be different to tomorrow, because when you're in alignment to nature, you're vibrating along nature's rhythms. So there's nothing fixed. There's no logic or reason, but then there is logic and reason, because that logic and reason comes from a different source. I keep reiterating this, and hopefully slowly, as you see what I do every day, not rather just what I say, and I'm teaching the different ways, but I do it through my way of life, a way of living, you'll recognize what I'm talking about. It'll start to make sense. You've got to be consistent in watching these videos. Okay, so go back. So I've got ginger here. I've peeled quite a bit of it, and I've got garlic. I like garlic. I need garlic. It's winter. Garlic and ginger are very powerful in the winter. And they are two medicinal components. I mean, garlic is an antibacterial, antiviral, antibiotic, anti-everything. It's very, very good. And ginger has some incredible qualities. Again, previous videos, I've shared this, or you can do your own research. Go and look it up for yourself. Some chopped green chilies. I've got 1 tomato, 1 vine tomato, nice red and ripe one. And I've chopped up some coriander leaves, which aren't that potent because they're not from my garden. There aren't any left in my garden. Okay, and I'm also going to put some lemon juice in as well, and I'm pretty sure that's all I use. I'm going to cook it in ghee. All my greys are showing. I'm going to cook it in ghee, and that will be it. And then I'll make some hot chapatis. So it's very easy to cook if you look up online on how to cook any type of curry. But with this one, you know, you heat up the ghee in a pan, and then you put the dry spices in, the whole dry spices, which I showed you. Make sure that you don't burn them. You put them in, let them sizzle for a little bit. You're tempering them, right? And then after that, what I do is add the crushed garlic and ginger, however much I want to put. I'll probably put all the garlic, but probably not all the ginger, right? And I'll crush it into a paste in a pestle and mortar. And then I'll let that cook just for a few 30 seconds. Again, it depends on the level of heat that I've got. And then I'm going to add the meat. And then at the same time, not long after, these dry ground spices. And then I'll cook up the mince so that it's not in lumps, and cook that for a little while. And then after that, I will add the onions and tomato. Not immediately, but that's how I do it. But I want you to practice and have a go, and then you let it cook slowly. Mince cooks very, very quickly because they're in smaller pieces. That's a really lovely quick meal, and it's got so much medicinal herbs and spices in it. And my mouth is already watering because I just want to eat some now. And then I'll put the green chilies and coriander right at the end, and add the lemon juice then. I might add some lemon juice before. We shall see. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about, if you remember in a previous video, I wish I had something to hold this phone up with, I'm just using my hand, but you might remember in a previous video I discussed, I can't remember which one, but I was discussing the importance of thinking for yourself and understanding the source from which your thoughts come from. And I want to expand upon that. The other thing I mentioned, that was it, is that be very careful with social media, because what you ask for, the way the algorithms work, you will give you back more of that. Artificial intelligence has taken over now. It's well in play. And so that whatever you feed it, remember your social media is artificial intelligence. Whatever you feed it, it feeds you more of back. So be very, very careful what you feed it. So play with it carefully, insofar as when you understand how it works, it can really work to your advantage. And one example I'm going to share with you right now, where I'm so interested in the mind, the brain, our source connection, the mind behind the universe, philosophy, perennial metaphysics, that those are the things that I'm looking for regularly. Ayurveda, naturopathy, ancient medicine. So what happens is that information comes back to me, so that when I go onto YouTube, I see these podcasts come up, which are all related to information I'm very interested in, knowledge I'm interested in. So I enjoy listening to that content. I'm very selective. And again, to reiterate, I have become like that because in the past, social media was in control of me, not to a high degree, not to the degree that, nowhere near to the degree that's happened today, but to some degree. And I chose in 2020, when all that nonsense occurred, as you know, I chose to come off of it around 2021, I can't remember, around that time. And for a whole year, I had no Facebook, no Instagram. I came off Twitter. At that time, it was X now, and I got rid of it all. The only thing that I kept, which of course nobody would have known, is watching YouTube content. My channel closed down, it was shut down actually, and I decided, let's get off it and start to go within. And that's what I'm recommending you all do, because it was the most magical 2 years, in fact, I think it was. It's only this year that I've come back, or late last year I've come back onto media. So it must have been 2.5 years where I went within, and some magical things happened since 2020-21. And now I've come back, because I'm living on a different frequency altogether, different bandwidth. And that's what I want to talk to you about. I've made some notes because I watched this wonderful YouTube video. I don't know, I think it was some kind of AI that was talking, or it was a human being, I don't know. I'm not interested. It was the content. I was listening to what was being said, and it resonated very strongly with what I've already shared with you, but it talked about brainwaves. I think it was work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, but one cannot be sure anymore. I'm very open-minded with these things, but what I do know is that it was accurate, but the understanding of it is different. This particular video was entitled Why You Can Live Alone and You Don't Need People. And I thought that was absolute nonsense, because even though the knowledge was very good in there, your perception of reading that title would see the entire content differently. So let me just explain a couple of things to you from this video. And one of the things it says is that it was really quite fascinating. In modern times, and this is absolutely true, I've mentioned it before, in modern times that we are told, and modern times I mean from probably the last 100, 200 years, because modernity has been setting in since the Renaissance period, that we have been told that we absolutely need someone or other people to feel whole. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't need people. What I'm suggesting is you don't need anyone else to feel whole. You will never feel whole just by using an external source, a validation from a third party. If you need to feel complete, and you need your partner to feel complete, or you need a television or a phone or anything else to feel complete, then you're addicted to a source outside of yourself. To feel complete, you just need to understand or understand yourself. I'm using some of the notes I've made just to remind me what to say. So I've written here that anyone that needs external validation for anything is depending on an external source for their everyday living. And what is happening is that you are sucking, it's a kind of parasitic way of living where you are sucking off the energy of someone or something else to give you the energy to live, to breathe and to survive. So we have all become parasites. And one of the things that was said is when you live like that, in order to be validated, what happens in the brain is that it releases a neurotransmitter that's released. It's coming from a different source, not the source of nature's principles. It's dopamine. And dopamine is that pleasure, quick fix hormone, neurotransmitter that is released to say, I feel great now. But that doesn't last long. You get that when you have a sweet snack. You get that when you're scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat that people use now. They've lost the plot. You get that, men get that when they're watching porn or when they sleep around. Women too. You get that when you're addicted to some kind of soap opera. That's an external validation that is not coming from you, and that makes you, let's be clear, a slave. You're a slave of that frequency. And I will say to you that the vast majority of people are living on that, no matter where they are, if they think they're not. Even the desire for me to put this up, if I was doing it, I can't. It's the frequency. Oh, I really have to put something up now. I've got to put something. Oh my God, I haven't put something up. No. See, it's the frequency from which it's coming from that matters. As well as the motive that you have behind it. Is the motive to self-satisfy you, or you're really doing it to serve others and grow yourself? Now, it's the hormones, it's the actual chemicals, not the hormones, that he was discussing here in this video. And one of the things he said, which I've talked about so much, is that he talks about conscious solitude. I would actually say silence. When you are in a state of silence, when you're sitting still with yourself, with no external distraction, I've talked about this, but he talks about the way the brain generates certain chemicals, which are completely different chemicals to when you are constantly connected to something or someone. The validation, the requirement, I need that someone to be there. That's enslavement, weakness. It's a terrible weakness in humanity, and it's prevalent throughout humanity. And he talks about the two chemicals which are produce certain waves, and it's a kind of sustainable serotonin. Serotonin is that, not feel good, but it's the one that gives you joy, happiness, calmness, contentment, bliss, even bliss. Actually, there's another chemical related to that. But what it does is that it creates certain waves in the brain. And I talked about these waves before. When you wake up first thing in the morning, they're there before you have time to think. And these when you silence the mind, they're called alpha and theta waves that are produced. And the effect, it's actually a technology that the human being has. And in this state, these neurotransmitters that are produced, they offer a feeling of total peace and contentment within. It's extremely powerful. And what happens is that the brain develops all these neural pathways, and they start to change over time. The more time you spend in the state of silence and stillness, that there's no effort required, that don't do this, don't think about that. Just sit in silence with yourself. When you do this every day, your entire brain structure within changes. What he says is that the fear center, which is the amygdala, quietens down, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the emotional center, active center, completely reforms. And what happens is you start to become almost self-sufficient on an energetic level, when I say energetic, it's almost your frequency and vibration it's become so powerful that you don't need any external validation. It's an extremely powerful way to live. And when you do that regularly, what happens is your entire brain structure within changes, and you literally switch the frequency on which you're living at, the bandwidth. And in previous videos, I've talked about trying to understand frequency as a bandwidth, like on a radio station, an AM and FM bandwidth. And one is connected to noise and enslavement and looking externally for answers. And the other one is connected to a frequency where everything is internal and you trust everything that's coming from within you. Because the bandwidth you're associated with is connected to source through your own source connection, which is a particular type of electrical wiring that sends messages to the mind behind the universe because it's one whole. So you're connecting to that whole of which we are all part of. You cannot divide us. We're just a unique part of that. This is actually when transformation takes place. That's the real beginning of the real awakening, because as that continues, you start to live from a place of creating, so that when these thoughts enter you and you you embrace that feeling of love. I don't mean that whoopee doopy love. That love I'm talking about is the love that human beings naturally is part of who we are, that we live from, and therefore we always do what's right. This is not right or wrong. This is that we just take action every day because we are living from a place of integrity, and we cannot live any other way. You know, now I look back and I just think, God, what was I doing? And it was almost like these things just peeled off my eyes, but it didn't happen overnight. An incident happened overnight when I got unwell, but it didn't happen overnight. It took me years. Now, I'm not saying that that's the same for everyone. It took me years, but it became exponential, where it got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I became more and more powerful, and things just start to happen when I just think, because it's coming from a whole pure source, and I've purified all my nonsensical thinking and behaviours. It's very hard because most people won't understand you. But I just wanted to share that with you. We are naturally like this. This is how we should be operating. It's all the years and the years of conditioning, growing up, schooling, and also ancestral conditioning and ancestral forces within our blood that has caused us to live like this. That all needs to be purified. Anyway, I just wanted to explain that to you. I hope you're beginning to understand. I'm going to share that video, but the problem is that video is it won't be understood in this way, so I may or may not share it. On another note, I had said that I'm going to open up an account on Odyssey. Well, you know what? I've changed my mind because I haven't got the time to do that. For the videos that are censored here, I'll explain why they're censored, and you just go and find the answers. And in this case, it's Cellular Awakening, that book that I do a book reading from once a week or so. And book reading 5 was censored because it talked about childhood and more. Perhaps something that I may have said also, although I do try and be careful. So get the book. I'll do book reading 6 in the next few days, and I'll try and be very careful what I say and change some of her words, which means it's not a book reading, but I have to do the book reading and just swap the words so that the algorithms don't censor the video. All right, have a good day. I hope you're having a good week, and I hope you've organised your week after the previous video that I put up on how to organise your day and the times and what you do and how you spend your hours. I really hope you've done that, because right now that is very important to keep you focused so that your attention doesn't go anywhere else. This is all about distraction and attention and bringing you back to who you are so that you focus on the things that need to be done day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. And make sure within that you make time for silence and stillness, because that is the key ingredient that'll help everything else work. Can you hear my little kitten down here? Have a lovely day.